Doesn't that describe the moment well? I mean, even some of us, let's be honest, like some of us who've been coming here for decades, you have your moments where you go, is any of this real? We feel tempted to doubt. Believers feel tempted to doubt, and doubters every once in a while, they go, maybe there's something more, but I don't know what to do with it. We have to confront something if we're really going to take what happens in Acts 19 and our scriptures and what we do here really, really seriously. We have to confront a myth about these separate boxes. And we have to kind of take apart this myth if we're really going to appreciate what's happening in the scriptures and have it really transform our lives. We have to critically interrogate this. Let's ask some serious questions, and so that we don't just dismiss what we read today as something from some unenlightened, superstitious path. Here's the first question we really want to ask. Are there actually godless, neutral spaces in the world? Is that really true? Is this really, this is supposed to be the neutral space, and this is the one tinged with religion and superstition and all of that stuff. Are there actually neutral spaces? And the next question we want to do to kind of interrogate this way that we all think is the thought of invisible forces that affect the destiny of human beings really just an ancient superstition? We need to confront those two questions and think through that more deeply. Okay, so it's Memorial Day weekend, right? You might see some more American flags flying around. I drove over the 35W bridge this morning, a big old American flag hanging from a crane, right? Maybe you see more flags up in your neighborhood. I don't know. I live out in the burbs, so I see more of that than maybe you guys do in the city. All right, what would happen this morning if I brought up, I'm not going to do this, Pastor Joel would come back from sabbatical real quick if I did this. But let's say this morning I had an American flag. It's Memorial Day weekend, right? And what do you think the response would be if this sanctuary was filled with blue-blooded, Midwestern, good old patriotic Americans, and I took that American flag and I lit it on fire? What kind of response? Some of you are getting squirmy right now, even as I say that. Boy, that would be really offensive to a lot of people. That would really, really bother a lot of people. But what if instead of doing that with an American flag, I just happened to have like a t-shirt, just a random t-shirt that just so happened to have like the colors of blue and red and white on it? What if I lit that on fire? Would people be as offended? No. I mean, they might go, it's kind of weird. Why is this pastor up here lighting stuff on fire? But I don't think they're going to be offended by that. Why? Why would people feel this? They're both just pieces of cloth, right? Pieces of cloth with the same colors on it. Why would people feel so outraged if you burn an American flag? And if you burned a red, white, and blue t-shirt, you might be like, this guy's weird, but I'm not offended by it. What's going on? Well, the question that we want to wrestle with is not what the material thing is, it's what is behind that flag. What does it represent? And this is one of the ways we can interrogate this sense that we have that there's no invisible forces guiding our life. Okay, is the American flag the same thing as a t-shirt that just so happens to have red, white, and blue on it? Is it? It's not. It's not the same thing in our culture. It's not just a physical thing. When I start talking like that, and I ask you, okay, is an American flag feel secular or sacred to people? And you go, oh, I don't know, right? To some people, it feels really, really spiritual and sacred. If it didn't, you'd have no problem with someone lighting it on fire, right? That's not just a secular thing. We're getting into something in our culture that kind of blurs the lines, doesn't it? What does, in our culture, what does that American flag represent? Talk to me here. Someone give me some things. What does the American flag represent that people feel like so strongly about? Would be sacrifice. There's a good word. Someone else. Freedom. Oh, yeah. We like that word in America, don't we? We like freedom. Now, is freedom a secular thing? Is it a spiritual thing? Can you see freedom? Can you measure freedom in a laboratory? Is it material? Or are we now getting into the world of invisible stuff? Maybe we're not as secular as we think. Maybe this is a myth. Freedom, that sounds a lot like an invisible force that drives us. Freedom is not an inherently visible material thing. It's an invisible value, say similar to something like beauty or wisdom. Now we're starting to understand a little bit more of the world like ancient people did. Here's a picture of one of the most famous gods of the Greco-Roman world, the world that the New Testament authors are living in. And this is the goddess Athena. And Athena is the patron goddess of Athens. Athens, outside of Rome, is probably the most important city in all of the ancient world. Athena is the patron goddess of the city of Athens, and she represents wisdom. So, what did the people of Athens really, really value? Did they value the statue? Well, yeah, kind of like we value the flag. What did they really value? They valued wisdom. That's why it was the center of philosophy in the ancient world. Now tell me, what do you think would happen if you stepped back into a time machine, all right? You got in with Marty McFly and you went back 2,000, 3,000 years even, and you marched yourself right atop the Acropolis where the temple to Athena was. It's called the Parthenon. Anybody ever visited Greece before? Has anybody ever seen it in person? Awesome. It's a magnificent. The ruins itself are magnificent. Magnificent. So let's say you marched yourself right up to the top, and you went in and you tore down the statue of Athena, or you set fire to the Parthenon. What kind of response do you think you would get from the people of Athens? It might be pretty similar to what you would get if, like, on a 4th of July or Memorial Day celebration, someone started setting fire to an American flag. Maybe they're just as upset because it's not the material thing that they're upset about. It's that material thing, that symbol represents something. We could say it's a god. We might not feel comfortable calling these things gods, but it was a god to them, and it seems we have certain things in our culture that are really, really valuable too. So maybe it might be helpful to kind of move away from seeing things in these split boxes and maybe rethink how all of this stuff works together. I put together a visualization for you that I think hopefully might be more helpful to help you see how everything is integrated together. I have something like this similar in my office, and it kind of helps remind me that my behaviors, the visible behaviors of my life, and the symbols that I cherish and value aren't just material secular things. They're not. Those things, the behaviors of my life, the symbols that I create, that I cherish, whether it's a cross, whether it's a picture of Jesus, whatever it might be, it shows me the invisible values that I cling to. And those invisible values show me the story that I believe about reality. And what sits atop all of that are the God or gods that we really follow in our life. So this question about, well, what do you believe about God? Do you believe in God? You can say yes to that question, right? Do you believe in God? And you can say, well, yes, I do. But the real question is, how are you living? What is the fruit of your life? What are the symbols that you cherish? Because that shows me your values. And your values show me the story that you believe about reality and your place in it. It shows me what you really believe God is like. And it shows me who the real gods are that you follow. These visible behaviors of our day-to-day life, they are tangible symbols. The tangible symbols we create and cherish, they are manifestations of these values. If you want to know what functionally operates as the God of someone's story, the God of their values, then you look at the symbols they value. You look at the fruit of their life. And then when you start seeing how all this is interconnected, you can start seeing how these boxes are, they're a little bit blurry. I'll give you one other example. How many of you were following this? Back in January, this crazy thing happened in the stock market. Any of you hear this like GameStop thing that happened in the stock market, right? So GameStop is kind of like a dying used video game store. And then suddenly in January, it went from $19 a share to nearly $150 a share almost overnight. So that means if you put $1,000 into GameStop at $19 a share, you could have sold it at its highest point for over $18,000 a share. I missed that one. Golly, hopefully some of you got in on that. I missed that one. Now, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because as I start talking about the stock market, you start going, well, that's secular stuff, right? It doesn't fit in church. But let's think again about this. So when this is happening, some of the big investment firms, people in Washington, D.C., they're starting to get freaked out because this sort of action in the market, it could really destabilize the entire market system. And so it was really starting to be seen as a threat. Is this actually the beginning of some sort of financial revolution? And so those in power, they got together and they said, hey, we've got to do something about this. We have to make sure that this revolutionary activity doesn't get too revolutionary. So what did they do to make sure that this revolutionary action didn't get too revolutionary? What important step did those in political and financial power take? Take a look here. They sent armed guards to protect the Wall Street bull. I thought that was secular. What do we need armed guards protecting the bull for? In fact, this is the tweet that actually came out from the New York Counterterrorism Department. Secular, right? Secular, right? The stock market is an interesting week, to say the least. We are happy to report that the Wall Street charging bull is secure and continues to preside over Bowling Green for the foreseeable future. Now that's a really weird thing to say if you're just secular, right? Why are we protecting a statue? Why do they care so much? And why would they be rightly concerned that if some financial revolution was taking place that someone might seek to deface or destroy that thing? It's because we're not secular. This is a myth, right? Preside over Bowling Green? What's the root word there? What does preside mean? To be in a position of authority in a meeting or a gathering, aka we see this thing as at least some way, shape, or form as a god. And this thing, I know it's just a statue, but it's kind of not because we're sending armed guards to protect it. It represents something really, really important, at least to some people. Don't tell me these secular spaces are free of belief about gods and spirits when we literally have idols that we revere in our supposedly godless spaces that are, guys, this one's like almost straight up identical to the ancient gods. I mean, I know we keep getting told, well, no, that's just secular. And you go, well, hang on a second. So right there's the charging bull. There's Molech. I'm sorry, that's Baal in the middle. The one on the end there is Molech. Ancient gods the Israelites were frequently tempted to worship. Now, we might call it different things. I know we're not bringing any children into the hands of the Wall Street charging bull, but we really need to critically interrogate this myth that this is just secular stuff. There's no such thing as truly secular. There's no godless, religionless vacuums. We all serve, whether we want to admit it, no matter what. We all serve invisible forces. And we might not like to call them gods or spirits or anything like that. Maybe some might just like to call it psychological forces. Cool. I won't talk you out of that. But just admit, it's still invisible. You can't see it. I'm telling you, no matter what you call it, we're not that different from ancient people.